The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a deep hum that seemed to shake the very walls. Kang De-ho stepped forward, his black diplomatic uniform crisp and clean. Behind him walked three other humans, each carrying themselves, with quiet dignity despite the weight of this moment. The chamber was enormous, larger than any building on Earth. Curved walls stretched up into darkness, and strange lights floated without any visible support. Around the circular room sat the representatives of 47 different alien species, each more bizarre than the last. Some looked like giant insects, others like living rocks, and a few seemed to be made of pure energy contained in glass suits. Kang De-ho had been preparing for this day for 20 years. He knew the name of every species represented here. Their customs, their languages, their fears. He had studied until his eyes burned and his mind felt ready to burst. Today, humanity would finally take its place among the stars as equals. At least, that was the plan. Park Min-soo stood to Kang's left, his military bearing impossible to hide even in civilian clothes. The old soldier's eyes moved constantly, studying each alien face, noting their positions, their weapons, their body language. Years of war had taught him to read danger in any form, and something about this chamber made his skin crawl. Lee So-young clutched her datapad tightly, her knuckles white with tension. The brilliant scientist had spent months preparing humanity's technological presentations. She had graphs showing human medical advances, engineering breakthroughs, and scientific discoveries. Everything that proved humanity deserved to be here. Choi. Wu Jin remained perfectly still, his face showing nothing. As head of human intelligence, he had already identified 12 different surveillance devices pointed at their group. He had also noticed the subtle way the alien guards had positioned themselves. This felt less like a hearing and more like a trial. The center of the chamber held a raised platform where the four humans now stood. Above them, a creature that looked like a massive jellyfish with too many eyes spoke in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Humans of Earth," the voice said, each word dripping with something that might have been disgust. "You have requested membership in the Galactic Council. You have been evaluated." Kang De-ho stepped forward slightly, his voice clear and strong. "Honored representatives, humanity is grateful for your consideration. We come in peace, seeking partnership and mutual growth among the stars." A sound like grinding metal came. From one side of the chamber, it might have been laughter. A creature that resembled a cross between a spider and a machine leaned forward, its multiple red eyes focusing on the humans. "Partnership," it said, its voice like nails on a chalkboard. "You speak of partnership, yet your species has known space travel for barely 2 centuries. We have ruled the stars for millennia." Another voice joined in, this one sounding like wind through broken glass. "Your people still fight wars over resources that could be synthesized in any basic laboratory. How can such primitives contribute to our civilization?" Lee So-young took a half step forward, her scientific mind unable to stay quiet. "Respected counselors, if I may present our recent advances in quantum computing and biological regeneration." "Silence," boomed a voice from the shadows. A shape that seemed to be made of living darkness moved forward. "We have seen your advances. They are crude copies of technologies we discarded eons ago." Kang De-ho felt his jaw tighten, but his voice remained steady. "Perhaps our methods are different, but our results speak for themselves. In the past century alone, we have eliminated 12 different diseases, increased our average lifespan by 40 years, and developed sustainable energy systems that—" "Enough," the jellyfish creature interrupted. "We have heard enough." The chamber fell silent, except for the strange humming of alien technology. Park Min-soo noticed how several of the smaller species seemed to shrink back in their seats, as if afraid to speak. Only the largest, most imposing alien seemed to have any voice here. A new figure emerged from the high seats, floating down toward the platform. It was tall and elegant, with skin like polished marble and eyes that glowed with their own light. When it spoke, its voice was beautiful and terrible at the same time. "I am High Counselor Vorthak Prime," it said, its words seeming to hang in the air. "For 3,000 years, my people have guided this council. We have maintained peace, order, and prosperity throughout known space." The alien paused, looking down at the four humans as if they were insects. "You humans are young, too young. Your species is violent, unpredictable, and dangerous. You wage war against your own kind over trivial differences. You poison your own world in the pursuit of temporary gains. You are not ready for the responsibilities that come with galactic citizenship." Choi Woo-jin's mind raced as he listened. He had expected rejection was possible, but not like this. This wasn't a careful evaluation of humanity's readiness. This was something else entirely. "Furthermore," the High Counselor continued, "your rapid technological advancement is concerning. Species that advance too quickly often become unstable. They upset the natural order of things." Now Park Min-soo understood what his instincts had been telling him. This wasn't about humanity being too primitive. It was about being too threatening. Kang Dae-ho made one last attempt. "High Counselor, we understand your concerns. We are willing to accept a probationary membership with restrictions and oversight. We simply ask for the chance to prove ourselves worthy of your trust." The silence that followed was deafening. Then, slowly, the High Counselor shook its head. "The Galactic Council has reached its decision," it announced, its voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. "Humanity is denied membership. You are deemed unfit for civilized space. Return to your small corner of the galaxy and perhaps, in a few thousand years, you may have evolved enough to deserve reconsideration." The words hit like physical blows. Lee So-young's face went pale, and her datapad slipped from numb fingers. Choi Woo-jin's jaw clenched so hard it was a wonder his teeth didn't crack. Park Min-soo's hand moved instinctively toward where his weapon would have been, if he had been allowed to carry one. But Kang Dae-ho simply nodded, his dignity intact despite the crushing disappointment. "We understand the Council's decision," he said, his voice betraying nothing of the storm raging inside him. "We thank you for your time and consideration." He turned to his companions and gestured toward the exit. Together, the four humans walked across the platform and toward the massive doors, their footsteps echoing in the suddenly quiet chamber. As they reached the exit, Park Min-soo caught Choi Woo-jin's eye and saw something there that made him smile, grimly. The intelligence chief had noticed something important during all those careful observations. The aliens weren't just arrogant. They were afraid. The doors closed behind them with the same deep hum, cutting off the sight of the alien council. In the corridor beyond, Kang Dae-ho finally allowed his shoulders to slump slightly. "Well," he said quietly, "that could have gone better." Choi Woo-jin looked back at the sealed doors, his mind already working on plans that would take years to unfold. "Maybe," he said, "or maybe it went exactly as it needed to." 3 years had passed since the rejection, but Lee So-young still remembered every word the aliens had spoken. She stood in her laboratory on Mars Colony, staring at the alien device floating in the containment field before her. The small, crystalline object hummed with energy patterns that should have been impossible according to human science, should have been impossible 3 years ago. "Run the scan again, Tae-hyun," she called to the young engineer working at the next station. Kim Tae-hyun looked up from his work, his face streaked with grease and his hair standing in all directions. "The quantum readings are still off the charts, Dr. Lee. This thing processes information faster than our best computers, but it uses less power than a light bulb." Lee So-young nodded, making notes on her tablet. The device was part of a communication array they had salvaged from a derelict alien ship found drifting near Jupiter. The Council species threw away more advanced technology than most civilizations ever dreamed of creating. Crude copies of technologies we discarded eons ago, she muttered, repeating the alien's words from that terrible day. We'll see about that. The laboratory around her buzzed with activity. Dozens of human scientists and engineers worked at stations filled with alien artifacts, each one a puzzle waiting to be solved. But they weren't just copying the alien designs, they were improving them. Across the solar system, similar scenes played out on space stations, asteroid mining facilities, and colony worlds. Humanity had taken the Council's rejection and turned it into fuel for the greatest period of innovation in human history. On Europa Station, Song Ji-won sat in a communications center that looked like something from a dream. Holographic displays showed data streams connecting every human settlement across known space. What had started as a simple upgrade to human communication networks had become something unprecedented. Connection established with New Beijing Colony, reported her assistant, a young man named Lim Jun-ho. That's the last one. The entire network is now online. Song Ji-won smiled as she looked at the display showing the vast web of connections. Every human world, every space station, every mining operation was now linked by communication systems that the aliens couldn't detect or intercept. The network used quantum entanglement principles they had learned from studying alien technology, but improved with human creativity. Send the message to all stations, she said. Operation Silent Thunder is ready to begin Phase 2. The message went out instantly, traveling faster than light to reach every corner of human space. It was simple and coded, but every human commander knew what it meant. The preparations could begin. On Earth, in a secured facility beneath the Himalayan mountains, Choi Woo-jin studied reports from across the galaxy. His intelligence network had grown far beyond what anyone imagined possible. Human traders, diplomats, and even simple tourists had become his eyes and ears throughout Council space. What they reported should have been encouraging for humanity's enemies. Instead, it painted a picture that made Choi's blood run cold. The B. Birth rate statistics are accurate? He asked the analyst sitting across from his desk. Dr. Park Hae-jin nodded grimly. Every major Council species is experiencing severe population decline. The Vorthak hegemony has had negative growth for over 2 centuries. The Zephyrian Empire hasn't had a natural birth in 50 years. They rely entirely on artificial reproduction now. Choi leaned back in his chair, processing the information. And their technology sector? Stagnant. Most Council species haven't made a genuine innovation in millennia. They've been coasting on accumulated knowledge, but they've lost the ability to truly create. The intelligence chief stood and walked to a window that looked out over a valley filled with construction. New factories, research centers, and training facilities stretched as far as the eye could see. Human industry had exploded in the years since the rejection, driven by a combination of wounded pride and desperate determination. They didn't reject us because we were too primitive, he said quietly. They rejected us because we were too young, too vital, too much like what they used to be. Meanwhile, in the asteroid belt, Yoon Soo-bin oversaw the construction of something that would have been impossible just 5 years earlier. The massive space dock floated in the void, its skeletal frame already larger than any structure humanity had ever built. How many ships can we process simultaneously? She asked her chief engineer. With the current configuration, about 50 vessels at once, replied Nam Ki-woo, consulting his tablet. But that's for full refit and supply. For basic maintenance and passenger transfer, we could handle 3 times that number. Yoon nodded, watching as automated systems guided another completed ship out of the dock. The vessels didn't look like traditional human designs. They were sleeker, more efficient, incorporating lessons learned from studying alien technology, but they were unmistakably human in their practical design and robust construction. "Speed up production on the transport modules," she ordered. "We're going to need more capacity than we originally planned." The ships leaving the dock weren't warships, despite their advanced design. They were colony vessels, research ships, and industrial platforms. Humanity was building the largest civilian fleet in galactic history, and most of the galaxy didn't even know it existed. Back on Mars, Lee So-young made a breakthrough that would change everything. The alien crystal she had been studying suddenly resonated with a harmonic frequency that human instruments could barely measure. Energy flowed through it in patterns she had never seen before. "Tae-hyun, you need to see this," she called out, her voice tight with excitement. The young engineer rushed over, his eyes widening as he saw the readings. "That's impossible. The energy output is increasing exponentially, but the input remains constant." "Not impossible," Lee said, her mind racing. "Just beyond current understanding. But we're about to change that." The crystal pulsed one more time, then stabilized. When the energy patterns settled, Lee realized they had just witnessed the birth of human faster-than-light technology that surpassed anything the Council possessed. Across human space, similar breakthroughs happened daily. Engineers solved problems that had puzzled alien scientists for centuries. Doctors developed treatments that could repair damage the aliens considered permanent. Artists created works that somehow seemed more alive than anything the Council had produced in generations. But the most important change wasn't in technology or medicine or art. It was in the human spirit itself. Admiral Nam Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of humanity's newest and most advanced ship, watching as Earth appeared on the main screen. He had just returned from a secret mission to the edge of Council space, where he had observed alien fleet movements and defensive positions. "What did you find out there?" asked his first officer, Captain Oh Se-jun. Nam was quiet for a long moment, remembering the alien ships he had seen. Massive vessels with weapons that could destroy planets, but somehow lacking the spark of innovation that made human ships dangerous in unexpected ways. "They're powerful," he said finally, "but they're also old, tired. They've been using the same tactics, the same strategies for so long that they've forgotten how to adapt." Oh nodded thoughtfully. "And us?" Nam smiled, thinking of all the young humans working in laboratories and factories across the solar system, each one burning with the need to prove that humanity deserved its place among the stars. "We're just getting started." In the depths of space, automated probes launched from human ships began mapping regions the Council had never bothered to explore. New worlds awaited discovery, new opportunities beckoned, and humanity was finally ready to claim its destiny. The aliens had called them too primitive, too young, too dangerous. They had been right about one thing. Humanity was dangerous, not to the innocent, but to those who sought to hold back the future through fear and arrogance. The quiet revolution had begun, and nothing would ever be the same. The message came at 0800 hours, Standard Earth Time, transmitted simultaneously to every human world, station, and ship across the galaxy. It was simple, just 3 words that had been planned for months. The Stars Call. On New Shanghai Colony, Professor An Mi-jung received the message while teaching her morning class about exogeology. She looked at her students, young faces eager to learn about the rocks and minerals of distant worlds, and felt her heart break a little. "Class dismissed," she said quietly. "Pack your things. All of them." Within 6 hours, the entire colony was in motion. Ships that had been quietly positioned in the outer system moved into orbit. Transport vessels that had been disguised as cargo haulers revealed their true purpose. What looked like chaos was actually the most carefully planned operation in human history. Captain Oh Se-jun stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Far Horizon, watching as colony ships loaded the last of New Shanghai's 8 million residents. His ship had spent the past year mapping routes to worlds beyond the galactic rim, places so distant that the Council had never bothered to explore them. "All civilians aboard, Captain," reported his navigation officer, Ensign Kang Min-ji. "Ready to depart on your command." Oh nodded, but didn't give the order yet. He was waiting for confirmation from hundreds of other ships, other colonies, other worlds. Humanity was leaving, but they were leaving together. On Europa Station, Song Ji-won coordinated the most complex logistical operation ever attempted. Her communication network carried constant updates from across human space as entire populations prepared to abandon the homes they had built over generations. "Titan mining facility reports full evacuation complete," came one report. "Mars orbital shipyards transferred to automated control," came another. "Asteroid belt operations shutting down main facilities, skeleton crews remaining for final phase." Each report represented thousands of lives uprooted, families saying goodbye to the only homes they had ever known. But there was no panic, no confusion. Humanity had been preparing for this moment for 3 years. Dr. Bae Young-ho floated in zero gravity aboard the research ship New Dawn, studying holographic displays of star charts that showed regions no alien had ever seen. His terraforming equipment was already being loaded onto colony ships, ready to turn dead worlds into new homes for humanity. "The third system looks most promising," he told his assistant, Dr. Lim Yun-seo. "7 potentially habitable worlds, and the local star is stable enough to support long-term colonization." Lim nodded, making notes on her tablet. "How long to make them livable? With our new atmospheric processors? Maybe 10 years for breathable air, 15 for stable ecosystems?" Bae paused, looking at the distant stars on his display. "It would have been faster with Council help, but we'll manage on our own." They had always managed on their own. That was what made humans different from the aliens who had rejected them. Admiral Nam Hyun-woo commanded the largest fleet movement in galactic history from his flagship, the Liberation. Around him, space filled with ships of every size and design. Colony transports that could carry entire cities. Industrial vessels loaded with factories and manufacturing equipment. Hospital ships, school ships, even ships designed to carry Earth's animals and plants to their new homes. "Final count, Admiral?" asked his Chief of Staff, Commander Yu Jun-ho. Nam consulted his display, watching as the last few ships reported, ready for departure. 2,743 vessels, population count at 412 million souls. It wasn't all of humanity. About 1 billion people had chosen to stay behind on Earth and the inner colonies. But those leaving represented the best and brightest, the most adventurous and innovative. They were humanity's future, sailing into the unknown. Engineer Lim Dong-sik worked frantically in the cargo bay of the transport ship Endeavour, making final adjustments to the mobile habitat modules. Each one was designed to become the core of a new settlement, containing everything needed to start a civilization from scratch. "Power systems check," he called to his team. "All green," came the reply. "Life support? Operating at full capacity. Manufacturing systems? Ready for deployment." Each module represented years of work, incorporating the best of human engineering with innovations learned from studying alien technology. They were more than just shelters. They were the seeds of new worlds. Director Han Yun-ji stood in the command center of the logistics ship coordination, watching displays that showed the movement of supplies, equipment, and people across dozens of star systems. Moving 400 million people wasn't just a matter of transportation. It required careful planning to ensure everyone would have what they needed to survive and thrive in their new homes. "Food production systems loaded and secured," reported one of her coordinators. "Medical facilities packaged for transport," came. Another update. "Educational databases and cultural archives successfully transferred." Humanity wasn't just moving their bodies to new worlds, they were taking their entire civilization with them. On Earth, President Kim Da-bin stood in the empty halls of the United Nations building, watching as the last transport lifted off from the spaceport outside. She had chosen to remain behind with those who couldn't or wouldn't leave, but her heart went with the ships disappearing into the star-filled sky. "They'll build something wonderful out there," said her aide, Deputy Director Moon Jung-soo. Kim nodded, touching the window with her fingertips. "I know they will. That's what humans do. We build." Meanwhile, in council space, the first signs of humanity's departure were being noticed. Shin Bo-ra, the young Altarian delegate who had tried to warn the council about rejecting humanity, stood in her office reading reports from across the galaxy. "The human trade stations have gone silent," her assistant reported. "No response to our communication attempts." "What about their diplomatic missions?" "Abandoned. Left running on automated systems, but all personnel have withdrawn." Shin felt a cold dread settling in her chest. She had tried to tell the council that humanity was different from other species they had rejected. Humans didn't retreat. They regrouped. The evacuation continued for weeks. Entire worlds emptied as ships carried their populations to assembly, points at the edge of human space. Ancient Earth remained inhabited, but its colonies, its industrial centers, its research facilities all fell silent one by one. Captain Lee Sang-min commanded one of the last ships to leave, the heavy transport, Remembrance. His cargo bay held something precious, soil from every human world, seeds from every plant humans had cultivated, genetic samples from every animal they had domesticated. Whatever happened in their new homes, humanity would remember where they came from. "Course laid in for Rendezvous Point Alpha," reported his navigator. "Take us out," Lee ordered, and felt the ship accelerate away from the solar system where humanity had been born. Behind them, Earth continued to spin in its orbit, but it was no longer the center of human civilization. That honor now belonged to whatever worlds they would claim among the distant stars. The great leaving was complete. Humanity had answered the Council's rejection, not with war or threats, but with the ultimate statement of independence. They had taken their future into their own hands and sailed beyond the horizon of known space. In the depths of the void, Admiral Nam Hyun-woo looked at his fleet stretched across light years of space and smiled. The aliens had called humanity too young, too primitive, too dangerous for civilized space. They were about to discover what happened when you told humans they didn't belong somewhere. Humans didn't argue. They went somewhere else and made it better. The first crisis hit the Vorthak shipping lanes on a Tuesday morning, Galactic Standard Time. Fleet Commander Zek Talar received the emergency report while reviewing routine patrol schedules, and at first he thought it was a mistake. "Sir, the Kepler 442 cargo transfer station has gone completely dark," his communications officer reported. "No response to any signals." Zek Talar frowned, his marble-like features creasing with confusion. "Equipment failure?" "Unknown, sir. But this is the third station this week." The fleet commander felt something cold settle in his stomach. Kepler 442 was a crucial hub in the galactic trade network. Thousands of ships passed through it every day, carrying goods between the core worlds and the outer territories. If it had failed, the economic impact would be enormous. "Send a repair team immediately," he ordered. What the repair team found made no sense. The station was intact, fully functional, and completely empty. Every system ran perfectly, but there wasn't a single living being aboard. The humans who had operated the station were simply gone. On the Zephyrian homeworld, Economic Minister Velandra stared at reports that made her ancient mind reel with disbelief. Trade volumes had dropped by 30% in just 2 months. Supply chains that had operated smoothly for centuries were falling apart. "How is this possible?" she asked her chief analyst, a younger Zephyrian named Morantis. "It's the human factor, Minister," Morantis replied, his voice tight with worry. "We never realized how much we depended on them." Velandra had lived for over 2,000 years, long enough to remember when her people had first encountered humans. She had watched as the energetic, innovative species had slowly integrated themselves into every aspect of galactic commerce, not through conquest or force, but through simple competence. "They fixed things," she said quietly, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. "When our systems failed, when our workers couldn't solve problems, when our old ways weren't working anymore. They fixed things. Now those fixers were gone, and the ancient machinery of galactic civilization was breaking down. Counselor Ryu J. Min had been the last human administrator to leave the Centauri mining complex. For 15 years he had managed the extraction, operations that supplied rare minerals to half the galaxy. The alien workers respected him, trusted him, and had no idea how to continue without him. Within a week of his departure, production had dropped to 20% of normal levels. The mining equipment, designed by a dozen different alien species over thousands of years, required constant adjustment and maintenance that only someone with human intuition seemed capable of providing. "The harmonics are all wrong," complained Supervisor Gektal, a massive creature that looked like a walking boulder. "The extraction beams keep losing synchronization." His assistant, a delicate being made of crystalline structures, nodded sadly. Administrator Ryu always knew how to fix these problems. He would look at the readings and somehow know exactly what to adjust. Neither of them understood that Ryu's ability wasn't magic. It was the human talent for seeing patterns, for understanding how different systems work together, for finding creative solutions to complex problems. It was the same talent that had driven human innovation for millennia. Now that talent was gone, sailing toward distant stars with the rest of humanity. Supreme. Chancellor Korth Avalon of the Hegemony Council called an emergency session for the first time in over a century. The massive alien, whose species had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, looked out at the assembled representatives with something approaching panic in his ancient eyes. "The economic reports are catastrophic," he announced, his voice echoing through the great chamber. "Industrial production is down 60%. Agricultural output has dropped by half. Transportation networks are failing across 17 sectors. The assembled aliens murmured among themselves, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of sounds. Some clicked, others hummed, and a few communicated through color changes in their skin. "What of the humans?" asked a delegate, "from the insectoid Velcaron species. Can we not simply recall them?" "They're gone," Korth Avalon replied, his voice heavy with an emotion he didn't want to name. "All of them. Every human colony, every human settlement, every human worker has simply vanished." Fleet Admiral Yang Seo-jin monitored the council, communications from her flagship deep in unexplored space. Her long-range sensors picked up the increasingly desperate messages being broadcast throughout galactic civilization, and she felt no satisfaction at their panic. "They're starting to understand," she said to her intelligence officer, Commander Park Ji-won. Park nodded, studying the intercepted communications on his display. "The Vorthak have lost 40% of their shipping capacity. The Zephyrians are facing food shortages for the first time in a millennium. The smaller species are talking about abandoning their colonies." Yang had served in the human fleet for 30 years. She had watched as her people were dismissed, underestimated, and ultimately rejected by the very civilizations they had helped to maintain. Now those civilizations were discovering the true cost of their arrogance. "Any word from the council?" "Directly?" she asked. "Not yet, but intelligence suggests they're preparing some kind of formal response. Go Sung-ho had been adopted by human diplomats as a child, raised in human schools, and trained in human universities. Despite his alien appearance, he thought like a human, innovated like a human, and understood systems the way humans did. He was also the only leader in council space who truly grasped the magnitude of the crisis. "You don't understand," he told the emergency council session, his translated voice carrying desperation. "This isn't just about losing workers. Humans weren't just employees in our civilization. They were the connective tissue that held everything together." The other council members stared at him with expressions ranging from confusion to outright hostility. Several had never liked having a human-educated alien in a position of authority. "Explain," commanded High Counselor Vorthak Prime, the same being who had dismissed humanity years before. Go gestured to a holographic display showing galactic infrastructure. "Look at the pattern. Every failed system, every broken supply chain, every crisis we're facing has one thing in common. They all depended on human innovation, human problem-solving, human adaptability. The display showed a galaxy-wide network of connections, all slowly turning red as failures cascaded throughout the system. We thought they were primitives serving our superior civilization," Go continued. "But they were actually the engineers keeping our ancient machinery running. We're like passengers on a ship who threw the crew overboard, and now we're discovering that none of us know how to sail." Dr. Han So-jin had been monitoring the galactic news feeds from New Terra, humanity's first major colony beyond the rim. The reports painted a picture of civilization in decline, but she felt only sadness at the waste. "They could have worked with us," she told her research team. "We could have helped them adapt, helped them grow. Instead, they chose pride over progress." Her assistant, Dr. Kim Tae-wan, looked up from his work on atmospheric processors. "Should we try to help them?" Han considered the question carefully. Humanity had spent 3 years preparing for this exodus. But they had also spent those years hoping the Council would change their minds. Even now, part of her wanted to reach out, to offer assistance to the struggling alien civilizations. "Not yet," she said finally. "They need to understand what they've lost before they can appreciate what we might offer in the future." The crisis deepened daily. Ancient automated systems, neglected for centuries because humans had maintained them, began failing in cascade patterns. Transportation networks that had operated for millennia ground to a halt. Research stations that had produced breakthrough technologies for generations went silent. On the Altarian homeworld, Shin Bo-Ra worked desperately to organize relief efforts for colonies that could no longer sustain themselves. She had warned the Council about rejecting humanity, but even she hadn't imagined the consequences would be this severe. "How long can we maintain emergency supplies to the outer colonies?" she asked her logistics coordinator. "Maybe 6 months," came the grim reply. "After that, they'll have to be evacuated." Shin looked out at the stars and wondered where humanity had gone. Somewhere out there, in the vast darkness between galaxies, 400 million humans were building new homes, creating new technologies, and probably not giving their former neighbors a second thought. The galaxy they had left behind was learning a harsh lesson about the difference between ruling and leading, between commanding and inspiring. The Council had thought they were superior to humanity. They were about to discover how wrong they had been. High Counselor Vorthak Prime stood before the emergency assembly, his ancient form trembling with emotions he had thought himself too evolved to feel. Behind him, holographic displays showed the catastrophic state of galactic civilization. Red. Indicators marked failed systems across thousands of worlds. Trade routes that had operated for millennia showed as broken lines. Colony after colony displayed evacuation warnings. "Honored delegates," he began, his voice carrying none of its former arrogance, "we face the greatest crisis in our recorded history." The chamber was only half full. Many species could no longer afford to send representatives to the council sessions. Their homeworlds needed every able being to deal with the cascading failures that had followed humanity's departure. Counselor Go Sung-ho, the human-raised alien, sat in the front row with data tablets spread before him. His latest reports painted an even grimmer picture than the displays behind the High Counselor. The Outer Rim colonies have begun mass evacuations, Go reported when called upon. The Kepler sectors have lost 80% of their population. The mining operations in the Vega system have shut down completely. A clicking sound filled the chamber as the insectoid delegate from Velkara spoke. How can this be? We ruled the galaxy for thousands of years before humans even left their homeworld. Go's expression was grim as he answered. Yes, we ruled, but somewhere along the way we stopped maintaining. We stopped innovating. We stopped adapting. The humans did all of that for us, and we never even noticed. On Earth, President Kim Da-bin received the first official communication from the Council in over a year. The message, delivered through automated systems that humanity had left running, was unlike anything the aliens had ever sent before. To the government of humanity, the message began, the Galactic Council formally acknowledges that errors were made in our previous assessment of your species' readiness for galactic citizenship. Kim read the message aloud to her small council of advisors, her voice growing softer with each word. We extend our sincere apologies for any offense caused by our rejection of your membership application. We would welcome the opportunity to discuss humanity's immediate integration into the Council at the highest levels of membership. The room fell silent. Deputy Director Moon Jung-soo was the first to speak. They're offering us full membership, he said quietly. Everything we asked for 3 years ago. Plus, emergency powers to help stabilize the crisis, added Economic Advisor Lee Chan-ho. They're essentially asking us to save their civilization. Kim walked to the window and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the edge of the galaxy, her people were building new worlds, creating new technologies, and living free from the arrogance and prejudice that had defined their experience with the Council. Send a response, she said finally. Tell them we'll forward their message to the appropriate authorities. The message took 6 months to reach Admiral Nam Hyun-woo in the Andromeda staging area. Humanity's exodus had been so complete that even finding them required detective work that pushed alien technology to its limits. When the Council's plea finally arrived, it was intercepted by automated monitoring stations that humanity had left behind. Nam stood on the observation deck of New Terra Station, watching as construction ships continued building humanity's first major city beyond the galactic rim. The station housed 12 million people and was already larger than most alien homeworlds. They want us to come back and fix their problems, he said to President Kim Da-bin, whose own message had arrived with the Council's plea. Around him, the leadership of humanity's new civilization had gathered. These were the people who had risked everything to leave behind the known galaxy and build something better in the darkness between stars. Director Lee Chan-ho, now head of the Human Federation's Advanced Sciences Division, shook his head in amazement. 3 years ago, they called us too primitive to join their club. Now they want us to run it. What's the situation in Council space? Asked General Park So-min, commander of the Human Defense Forces. Intelligence Chief Choi Woo-jin activated a holographic display showing the galaxy they had left behind. The image was a web of red warning indicators and broken connections. Complete systemic collapse, he reported. Industrial production down 90%. Transportation networks failing daily. Over 200 colony worlds have been abandoned. The Vorthak hegemony is fragmenting into separate kingdoms. The Zephyrian Empire hasn't had a functioning government. In 4 months. The room fell quiet as the leaders contemplated the magnitude of the crisis. These were people who had worked alongside alien colleagues, who had friends and colleagues among the Council species. The suffering represented by those red indicators was real. Dr. No Sang-wook, the Federation's chief medical officer, spoke first. We have the technology to help them. Our new atmospheric processors could restore their failing life support systems. Our medical advances could treat the diseases that are spreading through their overcrowded refugee centers. "And we have the ships to deliver aid," added Admiral Kang Soo-jin, Nam's chief of staff. "If we wanted to." All eyes turned to Ambassador Kang Dae-ho, the man who had stood in the council chamber 3 years earlier and heard humanity dismissed as unworthy of civilized space. Age had silvered his hair, but his dignity remained intact. "What do you think, old friend?" Nam asked. Kang was quiet for a long moment, remembering that day of rejection, the casual cruelty in the aliens' voices, the assumption that humanity would simply accept their judgment and remain in their assigned place. "They made their choice," he said finally. "They had the opportunity to work with us as equals, and they chose to see us as beneath them. Now they want us to save them from the consequences of their own arrogance." "But people are suffering," Dr. No pointed out. "Innocent people who had nothing to do with the Council's decision." "People suffered when the Council rejected us too," General Park replied. "Human colonies that could have benefited from galactic technology. Human scientists who could have collaborated on breakthrough research. Human families who dreamed of exploring the galaxy in peace." The debate continued for hours, but eventually they reached a consensus. Ambassador Kang would compose humanity's response to the Council's plea. The message that went back was simple and dignified, much like the man who wrote it. To the Galactic Council, we acknowledge receipt of your communication and your apology for past actions. We appreciate your offer of full membership in your organization. However, we must respectfully decline. Humanity has found its own path among the stars, and we are content with the destiny we have chosen for ourselves. We wish you success in resolving your current difficulties. Perhaps this experience will teach you to value cooperation over domination, innovation over tradition, and partnership over prejudice. The galaxy is vast enough for all of us to find our place within it. The response reached Council space just as the last of the great alien civilizations was fragmenting. High Counselor Vorthak Prime read it alone in his private chambers, his ancient form hunched with the weight of failure. Outside his window, the lights of the capital city flickered, as power grids struggled to maintain basic services without human maintenance. In the distance, refugee ships loaded with evacuees from failed colonies prepared to depart for worlds that might not be able to support them. He had ruled for 3,000 years, had seen his people rise to dominate the galaxy, had believed himself superior to every other form of life. Now he understood the difference between ruling through fear and leading through respect. Humanity had chosen the stars over revenge, creation over destruction, hope over hatred. They had taken their rejection and transformed it into liberation. Years later, as Council space fragmented into isolated systems and primitive kingdoms, stories began to spread about the humans who had vanished beyond the galactic rim. Some said they had built impossible cities among distant stars. Others claimed they had discovered new forms of faster-than-light travel that made old alien technology look primitive. Captain Yu Jun-ho, grandson of one of the original ambassadors, stood on the bridge of the exploration ship New Horizon as it approached a system where young alien civilizations were taking their first steps into space. These species had never heard of the Galactic Council, had never learned to see cooperation as weakness or innovation as dangerous. "First contact protocols ready, Captain," reported his communications officer. Yu smiled, remembering the stories his grandfather had told him about the day humanity was rejected by those who thought themselves superior. "Open a channel," he ordered. "Let's show them what real partnership looks like." The message that went out to the young alien species was an offer of friendship, of mutual learning, of shared exploration among the infinite stars. It was everything the Galactic Council could have been, and everything humanity would become. They had learned the difference between being superior and being better. Now they would teach it to the galaxy.